Welcome to Azimuth Podcast. I'm Kimberly McNabb, and joining me, as always, is my loving husband, Barrett McNabb.
Hello, everybody.
Last week, we watched Father Time yelling at clouds in the State of the Union address. There was a Republican rebuttal, and from the Independent Party was Robert Kennedy Jr.'s take on the State of the Union. Let's watch.
I'm Robert F. Kennedy Jr., and I'm running as an independent candidate for President of the United States. I grew up in an America that seemed to have achieved its promise as an exemplary nation. Modern democracy had spread from one nation, ours, in 1776, to 6 by 1865, and to 190 by the 1960s. We had become the city on the hill. We were a moral authority around the globe. Our government, institutions, our Congress, the court, the regulatory agencies, and even the American press were renowned for their integrity, and they were revered worldwide. Other nations wanted our American leadership. They knew the difference between leadership and bullying, which is something our current leaders seem to have forgotten. We were the template of liberty, proof that for a country to thrive, its people must be free. Free to speak, free to worship, free to build great companies, free to start small businesses. We were the freest country in the world, and by no coincidence, also the most prosperous. Working Americans could provide for their families on a single salary. They could buy a home, raise a family, save for retirement without mountains of debt. We made the best music, we made the best movies, we made gold standard automobiles that everybody in the world wanted. We made blue jeans, we reconstructed Europe.
So this is kind of interesting. I mean, he's leaning heavily on imagery for his uncle and his father, on the video side. But still, it kind of is interesting that he is referencing an era of the 50s and 60s with the cars and the blue jeans and the music, similar to the era that Donald Trump is getting his MAGA, Make America Great Again. And that's kind of interesting that he is also highlighting that same time period.
And the same sentiment.
Yeah, I mean, so it's really interesting that he's comparing that. And let's keep going.
We put men on the moon. We're the world's healthiest, best educated children. Our productivity, ingenuity, our can-do spirit were the envy of the world. We had confidence in our strength, our capacity, and the limitless potential of our country. Yeah, we had serious racial and environmental problems, but in the heady days of my youth, the environmental movement and the civil rights movement were picking up steam. My father and some of his allies were fighting to eliminate the last pockets of hunger in Appalachia and the Mississippi Delta and on the Indian reservations. And we became for the first time a true constitutional democracy in this country, with all races voting and holding political office. Other countries aspired to be like us, and our children grew up proud of their passport, proud of their flag. My uncle, President Kennedy, left us a legacy of peace and the hope of ending the arms race and winding down the Cold War. Those were the traditions of freedom, prosperity, and peace that my father, my uncle, and Martin Luther King Jr. were striving to protect and advance. In the half century since their deaths, we've lost touch with that vision for our country.
You know, one of the things I think that's important, again, he's heavily leaning on the imagery and even makes the references of his father and his uncle and Martin Luther King as well. He's talking about a time, and it looks like he's about to say, look, we're in decline. And again, I just can't say this enough. I mean, the media isn't covering him.
Right.
At all.
What they did to him in the DNC is completely wrong. I mean, they said
right.
If you show up to campaign in the early states, delegates aren't going to go to you. I mean, it's
right.
just horrible what they did to him. But he did say constitutional democracy, and I always like, no, it's constitutional republic.
Right, right.
But he talks about how kids used to be proud of their citizenship or their passport. Well, you have several generations where we're constantly bad-mouthing the United States of America. What do you expect?
Right.
We don't do that anymore. Of course.
Right. Yeah. So let's like he kind of warmed us up for what we were in the past, and I think he's about to spin us up for what he sees going on right now.
And I want to tell you right now that we can still restore that America, the America that almost was, and yet may be. But we have to start by being honest with ourselves. Neither my uncle nor my father would recognize the version of America that we have today. We become a nation of chronic illness, of violence, of loneliness, depression, and division, and poverty. Our great cities are becoming tent encampments. Modern-day Hoovervilles filled with undocumented immigrants and dispossessed Americans and people living in their cars, plagued by mental illness and addiction and despair. Our border has come under the control of criminal drug cartels that traffic in desolation and fentanyl and in busloads of desperate human beings. Our children are drowning in a crisis of alienation, of dispossession, and complete disconnection from their communities.
You know, one of the things to highlight with this, and it turns out I was right, we are going down into kind of a darker area, but, you know, whose fault is this? Whose fault is the immigration crisis? Whose fault is the drug use? Whose fault is the increase in crime? And as we can see, it is lax on crime, heavily Democrat areas that we're seeing the greatest amount of this problem.
Well, you know, Katie Britt, in her response to the State of the Union address, she said that President Joseph Biden inherited the best border policies of all time. And it kind of makes me think, you know, he should have just left it alone.
Right.
And you know, it's like a toddler who's got to touch the thing, and then it's completely ruined, completely breaks. I'm like, all you had to do is leave it alone.
Right.
So it just makes me think of that, like, okay, old man, don't touch stuff.
Right. You know, I completely agree with you. If he had left it alone and then having a secure border worked on ways to increase legal immigration.
Yes, that's what
that would have been
should have
an
been,
ideal.
expediting the legal, the backlog of people who are going the legal route. Expedite that.
Right. So yeah, I mean, so you know, we're seeing this darker turn. So let's keep going.
We've lost far more of our young people to drugs in the last decade than in the 20-year Vietnam War. We've printed 9 centuries worth of money in a little over a decade and spent $8 trillion on regime change wars. Those wars have made America less safe, our country less strong, and the world far less stable, while sending prices through the roof as our infrastructure falls apart. Tens of millions of young Americans no longer even dream of owning their own home. What happened to America, the land of opportunity, where you could be sure that if you worked hard and played by the rules, that you would have a decent life? All the new wealth of the last generation has gone to the billionaires and to transnational corporations, while our tattered middle class, our infrastructure, our industry have been hollowed out from the inside. Instead of promise, we've left our kids sick and drowning in debt. The public debt has gone from about $5 trillion under President George W. Bush to $34 trillion today, and U.S. household debt is at a record high of $17.3 trillion. If you include discouraged workers, our true unemployment rate is 23%.
I want to highlight that. So, you know, just to educate our audience, the unemployment rate includes, it's a formula, the amount of people that want a job and are looking for a job. Okay, that's
right.
That's what the unemployment
That's how they're
is.
measuring it when they state it at the federal level, which currently is at 3.9%.
Right. And the discouraged workers, he's about to throw up a number, but the discouraged numbers are people who want a job, can't get a job, and so therefore have stopped looking, right? And so you know, if you don't include them in the unemployment rate looks great.
Young parents face housing, grocery, and childcare costs that are unaffordable. Too many Americans are living bleak and hopeless lives, dreading the one medical emergency or the car repair that will tip them over the edge into homelessness.
You know, I hate stopping it that early, but because, you know, this is, you know, we have full-time jobs. We're regular mom and dad that have full-time jobs. We're small business owners, and we're doing YouTube as a side gig. We would love to work out, to continue to monetize our channel. We are monetized, but we know exactly this. We just recently had a $5,000 auto repair bill, and we had to do some mental gymnastics in order to figure out how to pay it. So
yeah, we
I feel
relate.
that.
I do want to circle back to the unemployment rate
Sure.
that he quoted. I think the federal unemployment rate is a little artificially skewed because they're not going to count people who were retired, who couldn't afford to stay retired, had to go back to work, and people getting second jobs because they
Sure.
could not afford to live the way they were currently.
Yeah, no, I agree, and that's a great point, and actually jogged my memory as well, is that the jobs, when you're saying this administration is creating jobs, the administration is replacing the jobs that were lost.
Yes, I think COVID lost 10 million jobs, and so President Biden likes to say, oh, well, I've created 14 million jobs. No, 10 million came back, approximately, and then probably some of that extra 4 million are people going back to work after retirement or getting a second job. I'm sure
Right.
that is some of it.
Right, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. But anyway, the might not be able to have the money or one car repair do. We feel the pain. We do.
We rank 40th globally in our people's health and wellness. Out of the richest countries in the world, the United States is 35th in child poverty rates, just above Mexico. We rank 36th in literacy and 45th in press freedom. We have one of the highest cancer rates in the world, and our life expectancy now ranks 59th according to the World Bank. That's right behind Algeria, which spends less than 1/30th per capita of what we spend. But even these grim figures hide the full picture of our dire health crisis. We now have the worst health outcomes in the rich world, the highest maternal mortality rates, the highest number of gun deaths per capita, and the highest number of teen pregnancies. We lead the world in obesity and chronic disease. According to CDC, 60% of Americans have at least one chronic condition. When my uncle was president, only 6% of Americans had chronic disease. And all of these plights fall heaviest on our young people. 4 in 10 of them suffer depression, and half of them have considered suicide. 1 in 10 has anxiety. 1 in 10 has ADHD. 1 in 5 is obese. It's time for us to say enough is enough. We were once a free and thriving nation, the healthiest and strongest in the world. What we once were, we can be again. How do I know that? It's because everywhere I go in this country, I see a profound determination among Americans to heal. We might have become the sickest country on earth, but we also have the most ingenious healers, both inside and outside conventional medicine. We may have sky-high levels of depression and addiction, but we also have innovators who have opened up new frontiers in recovery. We have some of the world's most depleted agricultural soils, but also some of the world's most innovative and energetic regenerative farmers. We have serious economic problems, but we also have the brightest and most ambitious entrepreneurs. We face hunger and homelessness, and yet we meet it with the highest philanthropic rates in the world and bottomless kindness and compassion. We may be on the mat today, but we can be on our feet and happy and healthy and strong again with good leadership tomorrow.
I there's not a lot to argue with there.
Right.
It does take a strong leader, but what the strong leader has to do is get away from the far left. The far left, the radicals are just absolutely ruining this country. They're allowing bad policy in the guise of humanitarian...
And under the guise of empathy. I'm sorry, but empathy is one of the greatest wolves in sheep's clothing. I mean, like the immigration, like, oh, feel sorry for the people. They're just escaping for a better life or whatever. Where's the empathy for the victims of violent crime? Where's the empathy for all the tax-paying citizens that stuff's being given away and you can't walk down the street without violence or, people living on the street?
Homeless veterans.
Yes, and where's this empathy for all the people who are waiting in line for treatment with the VA when the VA is giving out benefits to illegal immigrants? So I think your empathy is misplaced.
Right. Now, there's definitely no doubt that the United States has a bountiful economy and can help out people, but it should be focused inward first.
If we destroy her first, we won't be around to help other people.
And then to send and help everybody else out. So, it's almost like what my mother says, do the things you have to do before you do the things you want to do.
Yes.
Our people and our system were built for resilience. And here's the most important thing I want to tell you about the state of our union. Our nation seems more divided than ever, but Americans everywhere want to heal that divide. Our nation has become artificially divided by political forces that can survive only when we, the people, are at war with each other.
That's a great point.
I love how he mentioned the divide while scrolling. I'm not that active on Twitter. Just kind of recently I've gotten on, and I see some pretty crazy stuff out there. I'm like,
right.
No, I'll stick to, watching cute corgi videos on Instagram.
Right. Well, I mean, obviously we have the huge discussion on TikTok and its role in having the ability to influence people. And it's kind of interesting that TikTok, the big concern is that ByteDance could give information to the Chinese Communist Party at any time they wanted to, and so that's a big concern. So also having the ability to influence elections, having the ability to spread propaganda, ByteDance says none of that's true. So here's a big thing. They sent out a message, ByteDance did, to TikTok users and said, look, type in your zip code and contact your House of Representatives representative and call them and tell them you don't want TikTok to be canceled. You don't want them to ban TikTok in the United States. And the interesting thing is so you have a company that influenced tens of thousands of their users contact their representatives, and
or
a lot
they normally don't know who they are.
Sure. And they contact them. The messages they left were mainly of men who don't want TikTok to go away because then they're not going to watch their little anime girls doing dances.
Yeah, and then also, if that's not bad enough, teenagers saying, I'm going to kill myself. First of all, when did we let little tyrants like /terrorists /teenagers dictate what grown men do? Also, if they can't vote.
Right.
And I'm sorry, but anybody who's had a kid says they're going to do all sorts of things and don't actually mean it.
Well, I mean, but I want to reemphasize that the teenagers called and left messages on congressmen's cell phone, not cell phones, but their official lines saying, threatening suicide. If you take away TikTok, I will commit suicide. That is a huge problem. You're telling me that that's not a propaganda machine?
Yeah, your life revolves around one app so much that you can't go on living, really?
So, but anyway, that's some of the danger is this polarization that we're seeing is that big tech is sending out and censoring some conservative voices in favor of the ones that they want to have happen. And of course, you're going to have this polarization. Mm-hmm. It truly is.
People are tired of being manipulated by fear. We learned that lesson during COVID. We recognize that the same techniques of manipulating fear are being used by elites today to corral us into voting for one political candidate or the other. Americans are tired of these dire warnings that to preserve democracy itself, you better vote for our guy. I can tell you that in every state of this union, people are rejecting fear-mongering. 80% of Americans say they don't want to be forced to choose in this election between the lesser of two evils. They're tired of voting against something or someone. I see it in the crowds of mixed Republicans and Democrats and independents who attend my rallies, that a growing number of Americans are rejecting divisiveness. They're ready to unite, to rebuild this country, and to fulfill the promise of the America of my youth. They're ready to vote for something, and for someone they like, for someone who represents hope and healing, or someone with a inspiring vision for America's future.
That's a good point, is that he is saying, look, I couldn't be a Democrat, so I'm going to run as an independent, and instead of it's me or the other guy, here's a third option. I mean, we all know that 70% of Americans do not want to see a rematch between Donald Trump and Joe Biden.
Yeah, the match of the home for mom. It's just, it's ridiculous. So, unfortunately, we do experience most elections as voting between the lesser of the two evils. Like in 2015, one of my friends who I knew was on the left she kind of asked me who I was going to vote for, and instead of trying to demonize the other side, I said, most people view most elections as voting between the lesser of the two evils. And of course, I have to mention South Park, because there's an episode that was written during the Clinton versus Trump election. And it was choosing between a douche and a turd sandwich.
Okay.
So, and that's kind of how a lot of people feel right now.
Right.
8 years, nothing's changed.
Yep. So anyway, his message, we're going to keep going because there's just a little bit left, but his message seems to be, look, there is an alternative to vote, and it's kind of interesting that he's bringing that spin on it.
For a future that they can believe in. So that's the State of the Union that I want to bring you today. It's a nation that hungers to heal. It's a nation ready to face reality, to rebuild, to end the forever foreign wars, to clean out the corrupt Washington establishment, and to turn again toward peace, freedom, good health, and prosperity. When we unite in that vision, we're going to be unstoppable. Thank you, and God bless you.
Okay, so this is to bring up that statistic again. That 70% of people do not want to see a rematch. I have said that if it's not this election cycle, and I think this election cycle is going to be important. If it's not this election cycle, 2028, I think we will definitely see a major third-party option. Now we're, poised to have a strong third-party candidate in this election, just because there's so many people that are looking for an alternative.
Well, also the Kennedy last name, which another
Sure.
reason why, another way in which he has been very wrong is President Biden refused Secret Service detail for him.
Right.
He's a Kennedy.
Right.
Hello? Not exactly a good string of good luck running through that family.
That entire family.
So yeah, he's been wronged. I do like him. The Constitution, Declaration of Independence imagery. Some of the younger audience is probably going, "What's that writing?" It's called cursive.
It's called cursive.
They used to write everything in it, but there's just the patriotic sentiment behind it. So Barrett, you were thinking, why didn't he run in 2020? Why is he waiting till now?
Yeah. So my question that I would ask him, if I ever got the opportunity to interview him, would be, why did you wait until there was already a Democrat president incumbent? On the by and by, I'm not saying every single time, but on the by and by, nobody ever primaries the sitting president. So I'm trying to figure out if he has a good message, and some of his message is good. Some of the Democrats hate his message, even though he was a Democrat. Some of his message is good, but he would have had a better opportunity to express his message back in 2020. Election, because it would have been an open primary. By doing a primary against a sitting president, which just almost never works, it just seems like that's a particular waste.
Maybe he thinks President Biden is doing that bad of a job.
Yeah, I mean, that would be the only thing that I could think of. I mean, but obviously he has had to pivot and remove himself from the Democrat side and run as an independent, because he's just being shut out. And if he didn't know that was going to happen, then somebody advised him poorly. But still, as an independent, he almost should have started as an independent, honestly. But still, if you have, about 40%, 30, maybe actually I think it's about 30%. 30% are Republicans, about 37%, I think, are Democrats, and then the rest are independents. And so if he could actually get the independents, because you have the moderates in the middle, and then the independents that lean right and the independents that lean left, he could appeal to a lot of that population, which is a significant portion of the population. I'm not quite sure. I mean, the media has just really poo-pooed on him. They're not giving him any media coverage. He often has to go on Fox News in order to get any TV time.
Yeah, I've heard him on a number of conservative podcasts, and I applaud anybody if they're on the other side, or if they identify as being on the other side, and being willing to appear on the other side's media. So
right.
Good for him. I do like him. I don't agree with probably half of his policies, but if I do think that if President Trump wins again, I would like to see him in the cabinet somewhere. I heard a while back that a good theory for him would be to go after the pharmaceutical companies, because that's kind of his specialty. And I would be cheering him all the way.
Like his father, Attorney General?
Yep.
I mean, that's within the realm of possibility. But we wanted to bring this to you. Again, we're not advocating for RFK Jr. We really didn't advocate for anybody. We did a profile on every single presidential candidate. There's obviously only very few of them left. But still, we wanted to just at least bring it to light. I mean, he is offering a different State of the Union, and it's that period of time where Democrats and Republicans are talking about the State of the Union, and we wanted to make sure that we got an opportunity to share this with you. So thank you so much for watching, and stay tuned after these messages.